Good morning, my name is Daniel Shri, UR14CS319, and I'm here to do my 7th experiment of UNIX Lab, which deals with file operations using system calls. Our first part of the program is to copy the contents of a file to another file using the UNIX system call. So let's take a look at the program. First, we have our header files using namespace std. We have followed that up with the main program. We have two variables, fd1 and fd2, of character of type int. We have initialized the buffer of 100. Another buffer called file name, size 10, f2 of 10 as well. Then we input our file name, followed by our open call with file name and the read-only as attributes. And so if the fd that was returned is equal to -1, then we return that the file does not exist. However, if that's not the case, if -1 is not returned, any other value is returned, this is executed, this section right here. Read f1, read the attributes of the following read, fd1, buffer, and 100. If the contents of the file are the buffer, then we print this one, enter the new file name, which we read using the cin statement, and then fd2 we create that using we create the file using the input that was last given, which was f2, and we write the contents of the previous file into the buffer. So then this basically copies the file contents of the first file into the second file, and then we print a statement saying the contents of the file is, and then we print whatever is in fd2, and then print out the buff, the buffer contents, which is basically the contents inside the second file or the new file. When we execute this, we have so we have inputted a file called sample1. It basically contained a statement saying that this is a sample file. So when I entered a new file name, noc.cpp, the file contents of sample1 was transferred to noc.cpp. This concludes our first experiment. Moving on to our second one, we have our header files followed by the main program. Our second program is basically to concatenate two files and write it to the third file using UNIX system calls. So to do that, we have initialized a couple of variables here of type int. We have 3 buffers, and followed by that 3 more buffers. We input the first file name and we open that, and if we don't get that proper file, or if the fd1 is equal to -1, we print that the file does not exist. And if that's not the case, we read the contents of the file and we print whatever's inside the file. See how the contents of the file are, whatever's in buff. So buff contains all the contents of that file. Okay, and now we have a second file. The same thing applies from the first file. If the file does not exist, the condition is -1. Otherwise, the contents of the file are read and stored in buff2. So our operation here is to concatenate the contents of two files. So we have s3 is equal to s1 plus s2. Cout endl, enter the new file name. This is the file in which we are going to concatenate the first two contents of the files in. So we read the contents of f3. Then we input f3, the name of f3, and then we create the file, and then we write fd3, the buffers in 1, and then the contents of the second file from buffer 2, we write it into the third, and then we close the fd3 we open read only, and see out the content of the new file is this buffer3, and then we just read it. So first I've given my first name as sample1. The second file name is sample2. The contents of both files are displayed here. Here we have, I've entered the name of the new file, noc.cpp, and the content of the new file is, both the contents are there. So that just basically concatenates the contents of the first two files into the third file. Thirdly, we have a program, a C++ program to append some data to an existing file using UNIX system calls. To do that, we have a main program here. We have a couple of buffers: input stream buffer, file name buffer, and buffer. We input the file name, and then we, if in the case that it does not, if the user exists, inputs a wrong file name, the trigger is given. -1 will be returned, and which means the file does not exist. Otherwise, you read the contents of the buffer into the buffer, and then if you have any additional content, you input the additional content using getLine, and then you write the content into the given file, and the content of the new file, combining both the original content and the appended content, would be printed here. That's that. And lastly, the contents will be printed using cout. The buffer will be printed. So here I've given my file as sample2.cpp. Additional content I've entered as blah, and now the new file content will be the previous original content plus the appended content, which is blah. So that's our third program. Our fourth program deals with writing a C++ program to randomly access the file using UNIX system calls. So we have a couple of our header files here, followed by we initialize a couple of variables and a buffer. While1, we have a while loop here. We have a case statement, switch case statement. 1 is to create, 2 open a file, 3 is to write, and 4 is to read. And lastly, 5 is to close. So in case of 1, which is to create a file, then we have this, my file.txt 0755, file created with fd, and then you break. Secondly, we have file open with fd. Third, we are told to enter the data. As we scanf, we input that data from the user. The fourth case is to read that particular file. So we have a read command. We read it into the buffer. Lastly, we close the file. We use the command system call close fd. File will be closed, then we print the statement close with fd, and then we return exit1 to do that. And now we have inputted a file name called animal.txt. I've given the reference as 0 at the beginning of the file, and the offset as 30, and we've been told that the file has been randomly accessed. This concludes our seventh experiment of system calls.